The letter arrived at dawn, its edges soft from too many hands, too many miles, too much hope. Jacob Hale stood alone on the wide Montana prairie, the wind biting through his coat as he read her words again for the 100th time. I will arrive on the Friday train. I am not afraid of the cold. I am afraid only of never being chosen. Her name was Eleanor Whitmore, a woman he had never met, but somehow already loved, because in every carefully written line she sounded like loneliness had taught her strength. Jacob had sent for a mail-order bride not because he wanted ownership, but because years of ranching had carved silence into his bones. He was a widower without children, a man who spoke more to horses than to people, and Eleanor's letters had felt like a warm fire built from words alone. The Friday train came and went beneath a sky the color of iron. Passengers disembarked, laughing, arguing, hugging loved ones. But Eleanor never stepped onto the platform. Jacob waited until the conductor shook his head. No Eleanor, no explanation, only the wind rising and clouds rolling in like an omen. By nightfall, the blizzard hit with murderous force. Snow swallowed the horizon. The townsfolk told him it was impossible. Roads vanished, temperatures plunged, death rode the wind itself. But when Jacob found Eleanor's final letter in his coat pocket, unfinished and smudged as if written in fear, he saddled his horse without another word. Some men wait, cowboys ride, and so Jacob rode straight into the teeth of the storm, guided by nothing but instinct, guilt, and a promise he had never spoken aloud. The blizzard erased everything familiar. Fence lines vanished, landmarks disappeared. The world became white chaos and screaming wind. Jacob wrapped his scarf tight, ice forming on his lashes, hands numb on the reins. Every mile felt like defiance against death itself. He followed the rail line until it disappeared beneath drifts taller than his horse. Then he noticed something dark, half buried ahead. Wreckage, a broken sleigh, blood frozen in the snow, and beside it, footprints dragging, uneven, desperate. Eleanor had arrived, and she had survived, at least long enough to run. Jacob dismounted, heart hammering louder than the storm, and followed the trail into the wilderness, knowing that every second wasted was a second stolen from her life. He found her at the edge of a ravine, collapsed against a fallen pine, her coat torn, her fingers blue with cold. Eleanor Whitmore was smaller than he imagined, but fiercer too. Her eyes fluttered open when he knelt beside her, and even through cracked lips she whispered his name like it was a prayer. Jacob lifted her without hesitation, wrapping her against his chest, sharing his warmth as the storm howled like it wanted her soul. The ride back was slower, crueler. Eleanor drifted in and out of consciousness, murmuring fragments of her life. How she'd been cheated by the driver, abandoned miles from town, forced to flee when the storm came down like judgment. Jacob listened, rage burning hotter than the cold, promising silently that no harm would come to her now. When his horse finally stumbled into the shelter of his ranch barn near dawn, Jacob collapsed with her in his arms, alive only through stubborn will and love neither of them had planned. Days passed before Eleanor woke fully, the storm fading into memory, replaced by firelight and the smell of coffee. She reached for Jacob's hand, afraid he might vanish like a dream. He didn't. He stayed. And in that quiet room, built by survival and choice, not obligation, something stronger than any contract was born. Spring came slowly, thawing the land and their guarded hearts together. Eleanor learned the rhythms of ranch life. Jacob learned how laughter sounded inside his home. They married not because letters had promised it, but because a blizzard had proven it. And years later, when travelers passed by the Hale ranch and asked about the woman who survived the storm, Jacob would only smile and say, "She didn't arrive by train. She arrived by fate." If this story moved you, if courage, love, and sacrifice still matter to you, then subscribe to the channel. These are not just stories of the Old West. They are reminders that real strength is found in riding into the storm when everyone else turns back. The first real test of their new life came not with romance, but with fear. It arrived quietly one evening, when the sun sank red behind the hills, and Eleanor noticed Jacob standing too long at the window, his jaw tight, his hand resting near the rifle rack. She had learned that look. It meant trouble riding on the horizon. The Hale ranch sat far from town, and isolation was both blessing and curse. Word traveled slowly out here, but danger always seemed to arrive fast. 3 weeks after the blizzard, when Eleanor was finally strong enough to walk the length of the porch without Jacob hovering, riders appeared at the far fence line. 4 men, hard-faced, armed, and not looking for directions. Jacob recognized them immediately. They were the men who ran the freight routes through the mountains, the same kind of men who would abandon a woman in a storm for the price of a few extra coins. One of them was the driver Eleanor had described through fevered whispers while clinging to life. Jacob told her to stay inside, but Eleanor had not survived death to hide from it now. She stood beside him as the riders approached, her hand trembling, but her spine straight. The leader dismounted with a crooked grin, eyes sliding toward Eleanor like she was unfinished business. He spoke casually, as if discussing cattle prices, asking whether a woman had come through here recently, claiming she'd accused him of wrongdoing. Jacob didn't answer at first. Silence, in his experience, was more frightening than shouting. Then Eleanor stepped forward and told the truth, calmly, clearly, without drama. She told them how she had paid, how she had been abandoned, how the storm had nearly taken her life. The men laughed, but it was uneasy laughter now. Jacob's rifle was visible. So were the scars on his hands, earned from years of hard survival. He told them to leave and never return. The leader hesitated, calculating, then decided no woman was worth dying for. They rode off, threats muttered into the wind. Eleanor's knees gave out only after they were gone. Jacob caught her, holding her the same way he had in the snow, realizing that courage did not mean the absence of fear. It meant standing firm, despite it. That night, Eleanor cried for the first time since the blizzard, not from pain, but from release. Jacob listened as she spoke of the life she had left behind, of being unwanted, of choosing a mail-order marriage not out of desperation, but hope. Jacob confessed his own ghosts, the wife he had buried, the silence that had hollowed him out, the fear that he had sent for Eleanor only to fill a void. They discovered something vital in that shared honesty. Neither of them was a replacement for the other's past. They were a beginning. As winter loosened its grip, neighbors began to visit, curious about the woman who had survived the storm. Eleanor won them over not with beauty, but kindness. She fed hands twice her size, stitched wounds without flinching, and spoke to lonely ranch wives like she had always belonged among them. Slowly, the Hale ranch transformed from a place of solitude into a place of gathering. But peace in the West never lasted long. when spring floods tore through the lower valley, washing out bridges and trapping families, Jacob rode out with others to help. Eleanor watched him go, fear clawing her chest the same way the blizzard once had. Days passed without word. On the third night, a rider arrived with news. Jacob's horse had returned alone. Eleanor did not wait for permission. She saddled another horse and rode into the darkness, guided by the same instinct that had once driven Jacob into the storm for her. She found him injured, but alive, pinned by debris, refusing to stop directing others, even as blood soaked his shirt. When he saw her, relief broke through the pain. She helped save lives that night, her calm, steadying men twice her age. By dawn, Jacob understood something he had never known before. Love was not just being saved, it was being matched. Years later, when children filled the house and laughter echoed off the barn walls, the blizzard became legend. Travelers would stop, drawn by the warmth of the place, asking to hear the story again. Eleanor would smile and say that storms reveal who we truly are. Jacob would add that some promises are written not on paper, but in the will to ride into danger for another soul. And if this story found its way into your heart, if you believe love is proven through action, courage, and sacrifice, then subscribe to the channel. More stories like this wait ahead, where the Old West reminds us that even in the coldest storms, hope can still be found by those brave enough to ride toward it.